Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today. I see our participant numbers are jumping up, but I think we're at a point where we can get going with the presentation. So I'm Lauren Hills. I'm a policy analyst with the Renewable and Electrical Energy Division at Natural Resources Canada.
I'm Carolyn Lasky. I'm also a policy analyst at Natural Resources Canada.
So the purpose of this session today is to discuss the Smart Renewables and Electrifications Pathway Program, otherwise known as SREPs, which we'll be using throughout the presentation, that NRCan has recently launched. This presentation will focus on information relevant to Indigenous applicants specifically. Before we get started, I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge that my co-presenter and I are presenting from the unceded Algonquin Anishinaabeg territory, otherwise known as Ottawa. So just as a general note, we will be taking questions as well as respectful and constructive feedback at the end of the presentation today. So feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A box or raise your virtual hand during the question time. We'll have to unmute you from our end. Okay, so today I'll be providing an overview of the SREPs program with the aim of walking you through the application process, as well as providing opportunities for questions, feedbacks, and discussion. Today, I'll give an overview on project eligibility, funding, and how to apply. And then we'll have a discussion in order to clarify processes and answer any questions that you have related to SREPs. So the overall objective of the SREPs program is to support the transition to a cleaner electricity grid and to modernize our grid today to support the net zero economy of 2050. In addition to increasing representation of women, gender diverse, Indigenous peoples, and racialized people to the electricity and energy sector. Coal-fired electricity generation units are being phased out due to federal and provincial regulations. SREPs will support the replacement with renewable solutions. To do this, we're supporting new and improved clean energy generation and modernizing grids and electricity systems while supporting the increased equity, diversity, and inclusivity needed in this sector. So SREPs is going to support deployment projects that fall into three categories: established renewables, emerging technologies, and grid modernization. A capacity building stream is also currently under development. A project can involve technologies or aspects from multiple streams, in which case they would be deemed a hybrid project. The established renewable stream will be renewable technologies that are already market competitive and have already been established in Canada. The emerging tech stream will include newer renewable technologies and retrofitting activities that have not yet been extensively deployed in Canada and are not yet market competitive. So this can include some grid modernization projects being undertaken by non-utility applicants. The grid modernization stream will be only open to utilities and system operators. However, some Indigenous recipients can apply if they are microgrid operators. For the capacity building stream, we're expecting to launch in late summer or fall 2021. This stream will support activities necessary to get projects to a shovel-ready state, such as feasibility studies, etc., as well as activities that will help communities and workers get the most benefits from the projects, such as energy literacy activities and training programs. And now we're just going to chat about project eligibility and funding. So the SREPs program is supporting projects that decrease greenhouse gas emissions from Canada's electricity system, increasing renewable energy capacity, and generating economic and social benefits. For Indigenous applicants and Indigenous projects, SREPs defines Indigenous to include Inuit, Métis, First Nations, Status Indian, and non-Status Indian individuals, or any combination thereof. Of the $967 million funding we are receiving, there is a minimum carve-out of $100 million for Indigenous projects specifically. Depending on the equity ownership stake in the project, Indigenous applicants have the potential to be eligible for higher levels of funding, which we will discuss later in the presentation. Indigenous applicants may include Indigenous communities or governments, tribal councils or entities that fulfill a similar function, national or regional Indigenous councils, tribal organizations, and Indigenous for-profit and not-for-profit organizations.
eligible Indigenous projects must have a minimum generation capacity of 500 kilowatts. For non-Indigenous projects, this threshold is 1 megawatt. In addition, projects that are shovel ready or near shovel ready will be prioritized. The registration phase will determine eligibility and whether or not the project is in or out of scope of the program. So what does 500 kilowatt threshold look like? To give you an idea, 10 kilowatts is congruent with 1 solar panel on a house. 50 kilowatts can power a community center, and 500 kilowatts is considered a large-scale project, which could be upwards of 50 solar panels. Given that 500 kilowatts means a large-scale project, and in recognition that not every community will need 500 kilowatts of power, bundling of projects under one application can be done so that you're able to meet the 500 kilowatt threshold. Projects can be bundled across provinces and could also be a combination of 1 or more renewable technologies. These will be assessed on a case-by-case basis to determine their eligibility and designated stream under the program. So we recognize that First Nations, Inuit, and Métis partners may experience barriers in participating in the energy transition, which is why the program provides greater percentage of funding to Indigenous-owned recipients, as well as support for smaller size projects. So this funding breakdown applies to projects in every stream, so whether they're established or emerging, and the maximum funding amount is 50 million per eligible project, with a reimbursement of up to 75% of total project costs for Indigenous owned projects, with at least a 50% Indigenous ownership equity stake. So where there is less than a 50%, so 25 to 49.9%, these projects will be eligible for up to 50% of total project costs. The stacking limit with other sources of government funding is 100% for Indigenous applicants. And funding is delivered through contribution agreements, or CAs, which are non-repayable for Indigenous applicants, with the exception of Indigenous owned or controlled businesses that are publicly traded and have dividends paid out or distributed to shareholders. Applicants can submit applications for more than 1 project. However, there is 150 million cap per recipient. So I'll quickly go over the application process. I want to remind everyone that this information is available in the applicant guide, which will be updated periodically based on the feedback that we've received. As well, you can contact us through the SREP's inbox anytime you have questions or if you wish to provide feedback. As Lauren had mentioned, we will have a question and answer period at the end of this session. So unlike other programs that have a prescribed application window and are based on a competitive process, SREP's is committed to a continuous intake to accepting and evaluating proposals. So this model provides applicants with the time needed to gather project application materials like permits or regulatory approvals, and allows the program to approve projects when they're ready to start, so when they're closer to construction or installation. The program prioritizes Indigenous-led projects, as well as those in coal-dependent jurisdictions such as New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. In terms of evaluation, we prioritize projects based on their expected construction start date rather than their application submission date. And as part of this process, projects will be evaluated on an individual and non-competitive basis. So there are 3 main steps to our application process: the project registration, the technical and financial project application, and the project evaluation. So I'll be quickly going through those. So prior to registering, applicants are welcome to submit any questions about the program or their projects to the SREP's inbox. Applicants need to complete the project registration form, which is available on our website. From there, the program team will determine whether the project's technology type, size, objectives, and applicant all meet the basic program requirements, and will determine what stream the proposed project falls into. Eligible applicants will then be assigned a file number and sent the full application package in order to submit a technical and financial project application, which is outlined in the next slide. If invited to apply, Indigenous applicants with over a 50% equity stake in their projects will be connected with a program liaison, with whom they can ask any questions about eligibility or the application requirements. So the project registration form is pretty straightforward. We're just looking for your contact information, organizational information, and then an overview of the project. The intake process will close once all funds for the program have been committed, and this will be updated quarterly on our website. The technical and financial application will ensure that the project meets all necessary requirements as described in the applicant guide, and will confirm that the project is at a near shovel-ready state. It'll cover all the mandatory criteria for program funding in the 5 sections highlighted on this slide. So project overview, social benefits, permits and regulatory approvals, financials, and technical information. Projects with Indigenous ownership will be required to outline the percentage of Indigenous ownership and the expected benefits as a result of their participation or involvement in the project. SREP's program liaisons can answer questions about any of the application requirements and provide support throughout the application process for eligible Indigenous applicants with a 50% or more equity stake in their projects. All other applicants are also welcome to ask questions about the application to the SREP's inbox, which is monitored regularly by program staff. Once an application is submitted, it will undergo an initial evaluation to determine if it meets all the program criteria. At this stage, applicants may be contacted to provide additional information or clarification. If applicants fail to meet all the program requirements at that time, they'll have the opportunity to resubmit missing or incomplete information to the program. We will accept new information for any application up to the point that the program funding is fully committed.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Carolyn. At this point, we will be transitioning to the question period.